Ladies and gentlemen, kings and queens, daughters and sons of purpose, let me tell you something today. You didn't come this far to be abandoned. You didn't survive what tried to destroy you just to be forgotten. You're not walking through that fire alone. You're not standing in that storm by yourself. There are signs, oh yes, there are signs, that even in your brokenness, even in your uncertainty, even in your wilderness, God is still with you. Let's talk about it. Sign #1. Peace that don't make sense. You ever been in a situation where everything around you was chaos, but somehow you weren't losing your mind? People expected you to crumble, but you were calm. Quiet, collected, that's not denial, baby, that's divine. That's God showing up in your spirit like, be still, I got this. That kind of peace doesn't come from a paycheck, a partner, or a promotion. That kind of peace is heaven whispering, I'm here. You ever been in a situation where everything around you was falling apart? Your plans unraveling, relationships tense, your bank account whispering, not today. And yet, somehow, deep inside, there was a strange stillness. Like a calm right in the middle of the chaos, a silence that didn't feel empty but sacred. It's not that the problems disappeared. The bills still needed to be paid, the diagnosis still came through, the betrayal still stung. But somehow you weren't unraveling with it. That's the kind of peace that can't be manufactured. That's not something you can fake. That's not the kind of calm you get from reading a quote off the internet or taking a deep breath and hoping for the best. That kind of peace is divine. That kind of peace is God saying, I know what it looks like, but I'm here and I'm not leaving. People around you may have looked confused. They may have questioned why you weren't panicking, why you weren't angry, why you weren't losing sleep like before. But what they didn't know, what even you may not have fully understood, is that what was keeping you together wasn't your strength. It wasn't your strategy. It was presence, a presence that settles your soul when your mind wants to race. A presence that holds you steady when your knees want to buckle. A presence that shows up not in the roar of the thunder, but in the still, small whisper of peace. Be still. And if you've ever felt that kind of peace, even just for a moment, then you've felt God. Because peace like that doesn't come from outside in. It comes from inside out. You don't find it in a changed circumstance. You find it in a changed perspective, a knowing. A deep, bone-level confidence that even if the waters rise, even if the boat rocks, you will not sink because you're not alone. That peace is a sign that God is closer than the chaos. That even if the storm doesn't calm, He can calm you in the middle of it. And that's when you start realizing that peace is not the absence of trouble. It's the presence of God. It's not that you're suddenly numb to what's happening around you. It's that you're no longer controlled by it. It's like the anxiety knocks, but it doesn't get to move in. The fear tries to creep up, but it can't find a foothold. You're still navigating real problems, but there's a sacred space within you that the world can't touch. You wake up, and instead of dread, there's this strange assurance you should be breaking. But somehow you're breathing deeper. You should be spinning out, but you're staying grounded. That doesn't come from willpower. It comes from the Spirit. Sometimes we think God's with us only when the sun is shining, when the doors are opening, when life feels good. But one of the clearest signs that He's truly with you is when everything else is loud and His peace is louder. When the enemy is throwing everything he's got and you still sleep through the night. When your heart should be hardened from the pain, but somehow it's still open, still soft, still loving. That's not your doing. That's not coincidence. That's not luck. That is the covering of grace. That is the hand of God over your mind and your emotions, keeping you from falling apart in a season that was designed to break you. And people may not understand it. They may call it denial. They may call it naivety. But you know what it is. You know what it feels like to have cried all your tears and then suddenly feel like the weight lifted, even if the problem didn't. That's not because it magically fixed itself. That's because God stepped into the room of your soul and said, "Let there be peace." That's because something divine is anchoring you when the wind is trying to throw you. That's because the Spirit knows how to wrap you up in assurance when your world is unraveling. Sign #2, doors that should have stayed closed keep opening. You weren't qualified. You weren't picked. You didn't even know how you got the interview, the opportunity, the platform, but somehow it opened anyway. That wasn't a coincidence. That wasn't luck. That was favor. When God is with you, He'll open doors no man can shut and shut the ones that were about to break you. There are moments in life when you look at your reflection and ask, how did I get here? Not in a fearful way, not in a confused way, but with wonder. Because if you trace the steps, the resume didn't line up. The qualifications didn't measure up. You didn't come from the right family, the right connections, the right side of town. You didn't have the experience, the influence, or the applause. But the opportunity showed up anyway. The door opened, the call came, the email hit your inbox, and deep down you knew that wasn't me. That was something greater moving behind the scenes, arranging moments, shifting hearts, and aligning things you never could have orchestrated yourself. It's one thing to hustle your way into a space. It's another to be invited into a room you weren't even trying to enter. That's not strategy. That's favor. Sometimes we get so caught up in what we think we deserve that we miss what's being divinely handed to us. The doors you walked through weren't just based on effort, they were a result of alignment. There's something powerful about walking in grace. It doesn't ask for permission, it doesn't wait to be validated. It moves ahead of your resume and speaks on your behalf. It whispers into the hearts of decision makers. It bypasses systems, protocols, and traditions to place you where purpose already called you. And the truth is, when God is with you, some doors don't open because you knocked. Some open because heaven said, it's time. People might not understand how you got there. They may question your presence, sigh, die your progress, critique your credentials. But what they don't realize is that this isn't about credentials, it's about calling. When you're called, you don't have to beg for position. You don't have to strive to be seen. You don't have to manipulate your way to visibility. You just keep walking with integrity, with obedience, with humility, and the right doors find you. Not every door, not every opportunity, but the right ones. The ones that were built with your name in mind. The ones that need your voice, your story, your authenticity. You see, open doors are not just opportunities. They are confirmations. They are moments where God says, I know you questioned it. I know you doubted it. I know you felt unseen, but look, this one's for you. And when that door opens, it's not just about access. It's about assignment. It's not just about being in the room. It's about what you bring to the room. It's about showing up with all your history, all your healing, all your heart, and letting God work through you even when you feel inadequate. Because favor doesn't ask if you're ready, it covers you while you become. Some of us have been taught to minimize open doors like we stumbled into them, like we were just lucky to be in the right place at the right time. But when you start walking with clarity, you begin to see the fingerprints on those doors. The divine fingerprints that marked it, timed it, and swung it wide open just when you were about to give up. The job you weren't supposed to get, the platform you weren't supposed to speak on, the mentor you weren't supposed to meet, but you did, and now you're standing in a space not because you forced it, but because grace flowed. There's something sacred about knowing you didn't make it happen. It humbles you, it grounds you, it reminds you that there's something greater than your grind, greater than your connections, greater than your effort. And that something, that someone is orchestrating moments for your growth, your purpose, your calling. So when you find yourself in a room that doesn't make sense, don't shrink, don't doubt, don't apologize. Understand that the door wasn't opened for your comfort. It was opened for your contribution. Understand that even if you can't see how the pieces fit, you're standing in answered prayers you didn't even know you prayed. Sign #3. You keep getting back up. You've been knocked down more times than you can count. The enemy thought the last heartbreak, the last betrayal, the last rejection would take you out. But here you are, still standing. And not just standing, growing, learning, healing, becoming that bounce. Back isn't just resilience. That's divine reinforcement. That's what it looks like when heaven refuses to let you quit. You know what's wild. That after everything you've been through, you're still here. After the heartbreaks, the disappointments, the betrayals, the closed doors, the losses that almost swallowed you whole, you're still standing. You may not be standing the same way you were before. You may be a little bruised, a little quieter, a little more cautious. But you're still standing, and there's something sacred about that kind of resilience. Not the kind that screams with pride, but the kind that whispers, I didn't think I'd make it. But I did. That whisper, that quiet strength, that's not just grit. That's not just determination. That's God in you refusing to let you quit. Every time life knocked you down and you found the strength to rise again, even with tears in your eyes and doubt in your mind, that was a divine push. That was heaven saying, not yet. Your story isn't over. There were seasons where the weight was too much. You cried yourself to sleep. You isolated. You questioned if you were enough. You wanted to throw in the towel, and yet something kept pulling you forward. Something wouldn't let you give up. That something is a sign. It's not just your inner voice or your subconscious. It's divine presence holding you together when everything else was falling apart. See, strength doesn't always look like a roar. Sometimes it looks like taking a shower and facing the day when depression is heavy. Sometimes it looks like returning the call, sending the resume, stepping back into the room that once wounded you. Sometimes strength is just getting out of bed, holding your head up even when your heart is broken. And when you've been knocked down over and over again, but you keep getting back up, that's a holy fight inside of you. That's not just survival, that's the spirit. People often think being strong means being untouched, unbothered, unfazed. But real strength, the kind that's laced with grace and forged in fire, it looks like vulnerability, it looks like scars, it looks like trembling hands reaching toward purpose anyway, it looks like doing it afraid. And every time you got back up when everything in you wanted to stay down, it was evidence that God hadn't left you, because the enemy didn't just want to delay you. He wanted to destroy you, but it didn't work. You're still here, and not only that, you're learning, healing, growing. You may not have seen it in the moment, but every step forward you took was a spiritual decision, to trust, to try again, to believe there's still more. And that hope, that's a sign, because hope doesn't survive without a source. And if hope is still showing up in your story, even when everything else is uncertain, it means something divine is still breathing in your direction. Hope that keeps returning is heaven's reminder that the pit is not the end, that the pain is not the final chapter, that the breakdown is not bigger than the breakthrough, and it's not always about bouncing back quickly. Sometimes the miracle is in the slow rise, the way you gather yourself, the way you sit with your grief and still choose growth, the way you feel the weight of your past but still stretch toward your future. That kind of comeback isn't powered by ego, it's powered by grace, and when you begin to see that every comeback you've made wasn't by chance but by divine assistance, you stop underestimating your survival. You start recognizing the evidence, because you didn't just bounce back. You were held while you rebuilt. You were carried while you healed. You were guided even in the dark. And even now, if you're in a season where you feel like life hit you hard and you're trying to find your footing again, take a moment. Look at your own history. Look at the times you thought it was over and somehow you still made it. That's not just your strength. That's God's presence showing up in your persistence. That's grace stitched into your every rebound. That's purpose calling you forward through every fall. Sign #4. The right people find you. You stopped begging to be seen. You stopped shrinking to be loved. You stopped performing just to belong. And guess what? The right people still came. That's God curating your circle, baby. That's Him removing the counterfeits and aligning you with people who see you, value you, pray for you. When your relationships start looking like healing and purpose, that's not random, that's holy. There comes a point in your journey when you stop trying to force people to see you. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop shrinking just to fit into spaces that were never built to hold your capacity. And something beautiful happens in that moment. You start attracting what's aligned, not just what's available. The right people begin to find you. Not because you were loud, not because you begged for validation, not because you performed for approval, but because you finally got honest about who you are. You stopped pretending. You stopped hiding. You stepped out of the costume you wore to make everyone else comfortable, and you let your truth breathe. That's when divine alignment starts to work. That's when the people who are called to your life begin to recognize you. It's a different kind of peace when you no longer have to twist yourself into someone else's version of acceptable. When you realize that who you are is not too much, not too little, not too broken, not too late. It's like your soul exhales. You don't have to force conversations anymore. You don't have to manipulate closeness. You don't have to overextend yourself hoping someone will see your worth, because now the people entering your life are not arriving to fix you. They're arriving to see you. They're not intimidated by your depth. They don't flinch at your honesty. They don't silence your growth. They make room for it. And what's powerful is that this kind of alignment doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you start walking in truth. It happens when you finally stop apologizing for your healing process, when you stop trying to convince people that your transformation is real, when you get comfortable with losing the ones who only loved the unhealed version of you. Because sometimes growth will cost you community, but it will never cost you connection. The right connections come not to fill a void, but to reflect your value. They don't come to complete you. They come because they recognize that you're already whole. There's something sacred about the people who meet you in your becoming, the ones who don't need your backstory to believe in your potential, the ones who don't flinch when you tell them the truth of where you've been. The ones who can handle your silence and still stay close. These aren't just friendships. These are divine appointments. These are answered prayers. These are people who carry oil, not just opinions. People who bring peace, not pressure. People who walk with you, not ahead of you or behind you. People who protect your name in rooms you'll never enter. People who pray over you in seasons when you forget how to pray for yourself. And when these people show up, you'll know. You won't feel the urge to audition. You won't question whether you're too much. You'll feel safe, not because they're perfect, but because they're present in a way that doesn't demand your perfection. You'll feel seen, not the curated version of you, but the real, messy, growing, evolving version. And in that space, you'll find the kind of community that doesn't compete with your healing, but cultivates it. The kind of love that doesn't shrink under pressure, but expands with grace. The kind of support that doesn't get loud in your success, but shows up quiet and steady in your struggle. And maybe the most powerful thing is that this doesn't just show that people are changing. It shows that you are changing, that you're no longer addicted to being liked, that you're no longer settling for proximity over purpose, that you'd rather walk alone in truth than together in pretense. That's when God starts sending people who match your next level, people who don't just clap for your breakthrough but carry wisdom for your process, people who aren't impressed by the platform but are invested in your peace, people who recognize the call on your life even when you're still figuring it out for yourself. Sign #5. You feel the stretch, but you know it's sacred. Let's be real. Growth hurts. Purpose is heavy. Transformation is not cute. It's messy. It's loud. It's uncomfortable. But deep down, you know this isn't punishment. This is preparation. You're not being broken. You're being built. That stretch, that shift, that surrender, that's the presence of God pulling you out of your old story and into the promise. Don't resist it. Embrace it. It means He's near. There are moments in life where things start shifting around you, and at first it doesn't look like favor, it looks like frustration. Things start falling apart, people walk away, opportunities dry up. What once felt comfortable now feels foreign. The room that once felt like home now feels like a prison, and you start asking questions like, did I do something wrong? Did I miss it? Did I fail God somehow? But what if the discomfort isn't punishment? What if it's preparation? What if the disruption isn't the end, it's the evidence? Because sometimes when God is truly with you, He doesn't just bless you where you are. He makes it impossible for you to stay where you've been. Growth doesn't always come dressed in comfort. Sometimes it shows up as divine disruption. You'll know God is with you when the things you once tolerated start irritating your spirit. Conversations that used to entertain you now exhaust you. Patterns that used to feel like home now feel like chains. You can't settle the way you used to. You can't play small the way you used to. That's not you being ungrateful. That's your spirit being stretched. That's your identity beginning to mature. That's heaven making room in your soul for something your surroundings can no longer hold. You're being nudged, not punished, not rejected, repositioned. And it's wild because while everything outside of you feels like it's shifting, the real change is happening within you. Your appetite is changing. What you crave is different. You're less impressed by applause and more drawn to authenticity. You're not chasing platforms or chasing peace. You're not worried about being seen. You're focused on being whole, and you can't quite explain it to everyone around you because they remember the old you. The you who tolerated dysfunction, the you who stayed quiet to keep the peace, the you who bent to fit into spaces that couldn't hold your calling, but now you're evolving quietly, consistently, and they don't recognize this version of you. That's okay. You weren't meant to be recognizable to people who only knew your survival season. See, one of the surest signs that God is with you is when he starts making the old version of you uncomfortable. You can't go back, you can't shrink again, you can't unlearn the healing, you can't unknow the truth. You've tasted freedom now, you've glimpsed purpose now, and no matter how hard it gets, something in you knows this is not the end. That even though the road is unfamiliar, you're not walking it alone, because God never disrupts without direction. He never pulls without preparing, and even when he's silent, he's strategic. You might feel misunderstood. You might feel isolated. You might feel like everything familiar is being stripped away, but isolation is often the incubator for identity. Sometimes God pulls you away, not to punish you, but to pour into you without the noise of outside opinions. Sometimes the cocoon feels like a coffin, but it's actually the place where wings are formed. You're not buried. You're being built, and what's growing in you now will require new soil, new connections, new systems. So the shaking you feel, that's not the enemy winning. That's God clearing space. That's heaven making room for the next level. And while you may feel like you're losing everything, the truth is you're shedding everything that can't go with you. The weight that's falling off you is making you lighter for the leap that's ahead. The people who left weren't tied to your purpose. They were tied to your past. The doors that closed weren't denying you. They were protecting you. And even when you don't understand it all, there's a divine rhythm guiding your steps, moving you, stretching you, developing you, because where you're headed is bigger than what you've known. So hear me when I say, just because it's hard doesn't mean he's not with you. Just because it's quiet doesn't mean he's absent. Just because it's delayed doesn't mean it's denied. If you've seen even one of these signs, if peace found you in the storm, if grace kept you standing, if purpose is pulling you out of hiding, then baby, you don't need confirmation. You've already got evidence God is with you. Now walk like it, speak like it, pray like it, grow like it, because heaven didn't bring you this far just to watch you play small. Your survival was proof. Your comeback is a prophecy, and your future, oh, it's looking like favor. Amen.